Imagine stepping onto your porch early in the morning, the air still cool, a cup of tea warming your hands. The garden around you doesn't clamor for attention. Instead, it greets you quietly, already thriving without fuss. That's the kind of peace I want to share with you today, dear friend. Many of us have tried plants that wilt the moment we look away, or we've sighed over pots of soil that once promised beauty, but now hold only disappointment. But gardening doesn't need to be a test of stamina or constant care. It can be simple, soothing, and forgiving. Over the years, I've discovered that the secret isn't in working harder, it's in choosing plants that want to work with you. Perennials, those faithful friends that return season after season, can do just that. Even if your knees don't bend the way they used to, or your days feel too full for pruning and watering, the right perennials will still reward you with color, fragrance, and life. Today, we'll explore 17 of these near-effortless treasures, perfect for containers or pots. They are the quiet partners that remind us you don't need money, youth, or endless energy, just imagination, a little soil, and the willingness to let nature do what it does best. Do you remember the old saying, "A watched pot never boils"? Well, sedum proves the opposite, a plant that thrives best when you stop hovering over it. Sometimes called live, forever sedum has leaves like tiny water jars, storing every drop until it's needed. I once visited a neighbor's porch where a pot of sedum had been forgotten during a long summer vacation. When they returned, instead of a wilted mess, the plant was glowing with deeper reds and pinks, almost as if it had been waiting to surprise them. That's the magic of this plant. Mild neglect brings out its most vibrant colors. Sedum varieties offer so much personality. Autumn, joy blushes pink and then deepens as the season cools. Dragon's blood spreads like a warm red carpet over a shallow pot. Matrona stands tall, almost like it's keeping guard over the rest of your container garden. Each variety carries its own character, but they all share that same easygoing spirit. They don't demand rich soil or frequent watering. In fact, give them too much love and they'll sulk. Leave them be, and they'll reward you with bloom's texture and an ever-expanding collection as they multiply naturally. Here's the gentle lesson: not everything needs constant attention to be valuable. Just as in our lives, where some friendships flourish quietly without daily calls, sedum shows us that beauty can thrive in the spaces between effort. When you choose plants like these, you're not only saving your back and your schedule, you're learning to trust in resilience. Place a pot of sedum on your patio table and let it teach you that sometimes less really is more. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a hillside in the Mediterranean rocky soil, stretching under a bright sun, the air scented with lavender drifting on the breeze. That rugged beginning shaped lavender into the perfect plant for those of us who prefer beauty without constant labor. In containers, lavender finds the exact environment it craves: sharp drainage, modest soil, and a gardener who isn't tempted to overindulge it with fertilizer or water. In truth, lavender thrives on what feels like neglect. Plant it once, give it a few careful drinks in its first month, and then step back. Before long, you'll have a pot that hums with bees and releases fragrance with every passing breeze. There are many personalities within this plant family. English lavender braves harsh winters and returns faithfully year after year. French lavender waves those playful rabbit ear petals that always catch a visitor's eye. Spanish lavender is the eager performer, blooming almost non-stop in warmer months. And each has its gift fragrance for your home blossoms, for pollinators, and beauty for your containers. What they do not need is rich soil or constant feeding. In fact, too much luxury makes them soft, weak, and short-lived. They are proof that strength often comes from leaner conditions. I recall a friend who tried lavender in her flower bed year after year, only to see it fail. One spring, she tucked a pot of it on her sunny porch with gritty soil and forgot it for most of the summer. That plant not only survived, it flourished, greeting her each morning with purple blooms. The lesson lavender offers is simple. Sometimes less abundance, less fuss, and fewer hands make space for lasting strength. Have you ever noticed how some people light up a room without saying a word? Russian sage is the plant version of that quiet elegance. With its silvery white stems and soft clouds of blue-purple flowers, it doesn't clamor for attention, yet it transforms any container garden into something that feels professionally designed. I first discovered its charm on a neighbor's balcony. They had gone away for weeks in July, and when they returned, the Russian sage wasn't just alive. It was thriving, shimmering in the sun, as if it had been pampered every day. That's its secret. It asks so little and gives so much. Russian sage can grow 3 feet tall and just as wide, making it perfect for a large pot where it can stretch without restraint. Through midsummer and into fall, the blossoms create a haze of color that softens the edges of everything around it. Even after the blooms fade, the skeleton of silver stems remains beautiful through winter, offering structure when most other plants have surrendered to the cold. And while many gardeners worry about pests or deer nibbling at their efforts, Russian sage shrugs them all off. Heat waves, droughts, even neglected, only seems to get stronger. The only care it truly requires is a hard cutback in late winter, just before spring wakes it again. A quick trim to about 6 inches, and you've reset the stage for another year of effortless beauty. Russian sage teaches a lovely lesson. Grace doesn't always come from constant tending. Sometimes it comes from endurance, from standing tall in hard seasons, and from offering beauty long after the showy blooms have passed. Place one in a pot on your patio, and you'll see it's a companion that asks for almost nothing, but gives you quiet splendor every day. Do you remember when families gathered on porches in the evening, children circling around their mothers and fathers like little satellites, hens and chicks, carry that same image into the garden? The hen is the sturdy parent rosette, and the chicks are the smaller offsets that crowd around it, eager to grow. It's a living story of continuity of generations, sitting side by side in shallow soil, needing almost nothing to keep thriving. These succulents don't demand deep pots. In fact, I've seen them flourish in old pie tins, chipped bowls, and even a cracked teacup rescued from a thrift shop. Their rosettes can be jade green, wine red, even blue-gray, each variety with a different character. Some wear soft cobweb-like filaments, others gleam waxy and smooth, and the best part, every chick can be lifted, replanted, and started anew, which means one container soon becomes 3, then 5. Before long, you'll have extras to gift to neighbors or grandchildren who want a plant of their own. I remember a retired teacher in our community who tucked hens and chicks into an old wooden drawer she found at a garage sale. Years later, that drawer overflowed with color, spilling beauty from every corner. She would smile and say, "They multiply like blessings you can't ever run out." That's the truth of hens and chicks. They're little reminders that life expands when we share it. These plants ask for little water, tolerate cold winters, and reward you with a resilient display that never seems to falter. And maybe the lesson is this. Just as we pass along stories, recipes, and wisdom, hens and chicks remind us that beauty is multiplied when it is shared generously. Think back to the first time you saw a meadow buzzing with butterflies, their wings moving like pieces of stained glass in the sunlight. That's the feeling catmint brings to even the smallest patio pot. Unlike its cousin catnip, which draws every neighborhood cat into a frenzy, catmint is a refined companion, softly mounding, gently aromatic. and bursting into clouds of blue-purple flowers from spring until frost. All it asks is a quick trim halfway through the season, almost like giving it a summer haircut, and it rewards you with a second flush of blossoms that last until the chill sets in. In containers, catmint behaves beautifully, forming round compact clumps about 1.5 feet tall and wide. The foliage is a gray-green that releases a fresh herbal scent whenever brushed, making even a small balcony feel like a garden retreat. I once helped a widowed neighbor plant catmint along her porch rail. She confessed she didn't have the strength or patience to fuss over flowers anymore. By midsummer, her railings were alive with butterflies, and each evening she would sit outside with her tea, breathing in the scent, watching the delicate wings flutter. "It feels like company," she told me with a smile. There are varieties to suit any space. Walker's Low offers graceful mounds that spill beautifully from larger containers, while Six Hills Giant grows with drama, creating a showpiece in any garden. And perhaps its most comforting gift, it almost never suffers from pests or disease, no aphids, no mites, no trouble at all. Catmint's lesson is one of quiet companionship. Like a gentle friend who steadies us with calm conversation, catmint asks for little but fills the air with life fragrance and a reminder that peace often blooms in simplicity. If your porch or patio has corners where sunlight barely lingers, don't despair. Those shadowed spots can be some of the most beautiful. Hostas are the champions of shade, their leaves unfolding like wide fans, glowing with unexpected color, even in dim light. I have a friend who planted a single hosta in a ceramic pot nearly 15 years ago. That same plant still greets her each spring, bigger and bolder than the year before, as if proving that time itself can be a gardener's ally. In containers, hostas actually outperform those planted in the ground. Why? Because you control the two enemies that plague them: most slugs and soggy soil. Lifted above the earth in a well-drained pot, their leaves remain untouched, pristine, and lush. Varieties bring endless choice. Sum and Substance offers enormous chartreuse leaves that glow as if lit from within. Blue Angel spreads broad, cool gray leaves that pair beautifully with white blooms. Patriot shows off crisp green leaves edged in painted white, while fragrant hostas reward you with blossoms sweet as gardenias. What makes them especially dear to the lazy gardener is their portability. You can roll or shift containers to highlight shady decks in summer, then tuck them into a sheltered spot for winter's protection. With hardly any care beyond trimming flower stalks and dividing every few years, one hosta becomes 3, then 6, until you're sharing with friends or neighbors. The lesson hostas whisper is simple, yet profound beauty can thrive in places where little light shines. For those of us who sometimes feel overshadowed by age, circumstance, or quiet seasons of life, hostas remind us that shade is not absence. It's a canvas where unexpected radiance appears. There was a time when gardeners believed flowers were the only way to bring color to a shady corner. Then, coral bells, also called heuchera, changed that belief forever. These perennials are like an artist's paint box, spilling out shades of burgundy, lime, silver, orange, and even near black leaves that shine all season long. Imagine stepping onto your patio and seeing a container that glows even before a single blossom appears. That is the gift. Coral bells bring constant, effortless beauty through foliage alone. I once visited a friend who had lined her back steps with pots of coral bells in every hue. She laughed, saying, "I don't have to remember when they bloom, they just look good all the time." And she was right. Palace purple glimmers like a glass of dark wine in the evening light, while lime Ricky seems to glow from within, brightening even the deepest shade. Silver scrolls appear hand-painted with shimmering silver etched across purple leaves, And Fire Chief transforms from red to orange to burgundy as the seasons change like a living calendar marking the passage of time. The blossoms, delicate spikes of tiny bells, rise in early summer like a soft chorus above the leaves, but they are almost a bonus, not the main show. In containers, coral bells behave politely, forming neat clumps that never sprawl or crowd. They ask for very little, perhaps a weekly sip of water in summer, no fertilizer, and occasional admiration. I have a pot of coral bells that has thrived for nearly a decade with no sign of slowing. Their lesson is gentle yet important beauty doesn't need to shout. Like a quiet soul who brightens every room with presence alone, coral bells remind us that steady, enduring color can bring joy without clamoring for attention. If you've ever held a feather between your fingers and watched it dance on a breeze, you'll understand the charm of a stilbe. At first glance, its feathery blooms seem far too delicate for a lazy gardener, but the truth is just the opposite. Once tucked into a shady container, a stilbe thrives, quietly asking only for a bit of steady moisture. When it blooms, it does so with grandeur, soft plumes in shades of white, pink, red peach, and purple rise, above fern-like foliage, swaying as though they were painted into a dream. I remember visiting a community garden where one pot of astilbe had been placed near a wooden bench. All summer, people pause there, drawn not only by the beauty of the flowers, but by the way they seem to light up that shaded spot. One visitor said it looks like fireworks frozen in the air, and she was right. Varieties like bridal veil gleam pure white while fennel burns deep red with matching dark foliage. Deutschland bursts early in the season with pristine flowers that glow like lanterns in the dusk. Even when the flowers fade, astilbe keeps its grace. Some gardeners leave the dry plumes standing through winter where they catch frost and look like lacework against the cold. Others cut them back for a neater appearance. Either way, they return reliably each spring, stronger and fuller. They are also deer-resistant and perfectly hardy, dividing themselves naturally every few years, which means more plants to share. Astilbe teaches us that appearances can mislead. What looks fragile is often far stronger than we imagine. For those of us who sometimes feel overlooked or underestimated, these feathered plumes remind us that quiet resilience can be more powerful and more beautiful than loud display. There's something almost otherworldly about the Japanese painted fern. Unlike the plain green ferns we often see tucked into dark corners, this one looks as though an artist brushed each frond with metallic paint. Silvery gray leaves shimmer with hints of purple along their veins, and green edges soften the glow, creating a living watercolor in your container. Even the names of its varieties, like burgundy lace or ghost, sound like titles from a storybook, and that's exactly how it feels to sit beside them, like stepping into a quiet tale spun in color and shadow. I once met a gentleman who had retired from a busy office job. He told me he wanted a plant that made his small patio feel restful, almost like a sanctuary. He chose a single Japanese painted fern in a clay pot. That summer, he would sit with his morning paper, glancing at the metallic fronds catching the light. "It's like a calm companion," he said. And he was right. The fern asked little of him, an occasional sip of water, and nothing more. And in return, it filled his mornings with serenity. These ferns are perfectly behaved in containers compact, never invasive, never sprawling. They don't need dividing, they don't attract pests, and once established, they are surprisingly drought-tolerant. They fade back in winter, but return faithfully with spring's warmth, as dependable as the sunrise. Best of all, their glow makes any shaded corner feel intentional and alive, not forgotten. The lesson of the Japanese painted fern is subtle, but deep beauty is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it is found in the quiet shimmer, the small details, and the resilience of something that thrives where little else would. It reminds us that even in the shadows, art can flourish. Some plants are like seasonal visitors here for a moment, then gone until next year. Bergenia, however, is the steadfast friend who stays through every season. Its broad, glossy leaves look almost tropical, yet it's perfectly hardy in cool climates and thrives in containers with very little effort. Each rosette of leaves grows thick and waxy, shedding water and resisting wind almost like nature built it with armor. In spring, tall stems rise with clusters of pink or white flowers that appear before most plants even wake from winter. It's a sight that feels like hope itself color arriving before you expect it. I once knew a woman who planted Bergenia in an old stone trough behind her house. She watered it once when planting, then all but forgot it. 5 years later, that same plant stood as green and glossy as ever, its leaves turning burgundy in the cold months, its flowers lighting the early spring. She would point to it proudly and say, "That's my set it and forget it beauty." And truly it was. Varieties like Winter Glow blush red in frost while Baby Doll stays compact for smaller containers. What makes Bergenia a lazy gardener's treasure is its consistency. It tolerates shade, poor soil, and neglect without complaint. It keeps its structure year-round, giving your containers presence even in the bleak months when everything else has withered away. The lesson from Bergenia is one of steady presence. In life, we often think excitement comes only from change from the loudest or the newest, but sometimes what brings the deepest comfort is the friend or the plant that stays offering beauty not in bursts, but in constancy. Bergenia reminds us that reliability can be its own form of grace. Some flowers seem to carry a bit of summer inside them, no matter where they grow. Black-eyed Susans are just that cheerful bursts of golden petals circling a dark center, like little suns shining from their pots. Place one on your porch, and it will bloom through heat, through drought, through the long stretch of late summer when many plants begin to fade. I've often called them the optimists of the perennial world because they seem determined to keep smiling even in tough conditions. A neighbor of mine once filled 3 mismatched containers with black-eyed Susans. She didn't fuss with soil or feeding, just watered them lightly now and then. By midsummer, her modest pots had become a glowing display that caught the eye of everyone passing by. Bees swarmed happily, butterflies danced around, and later in fall, goldfinches perched on the seed heads, enjoying their feast. What started as a simple planting had turned into a lively stage for half the neighborhood's wildlife. There are many delightful varieties. Goldsturm is the classic, covering itself in blooms for weeks on end. Cherokee Sunset brings deeper sunset-like tones, while Prairie Sun surprises with green centers instead of dark ones. No matter which you choose, they reseed themselves generously, ensuring that one pot becomes many over time. For the lazy gardener, black-eyed Susans are a gift, low-maintenance, pest-resistant, and stronger in their second and third years than when first planted. But beyond their practicality, they remind us of something greater. Joy doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as a bright bloom that keeps shining no matter the weather. And like those blooms, we too can choose to meet life's challenges with a steady glow. Have you ever brushed your hand against a lamb's ear leaf? Soft and velvety, it feels like stroking a favorite blanket, bringing a little comfort with every touch. These silvery plants are more than just beautiful. They are survivors, perfectly suited for gardeners who forget to water or prefer to sit back and let nature do the work. In fact, lamb's ear becomes more striking when it's ignored. Too much water makes the leaves limp and prone to rot, but when left to dry between drinks, the plant rewards you with stronger color and a silvery glow that catches the light like moonbeams in your pots. I once helped a couple settle into their retirement cottage, and we placed lamb's ear in a wide clay container by the front steps. They admitted they weren't the type to fuss over plants, and true to form, they mostly forgot about it. Months later, the lamb's ear looked like a soft silver rug draped across the pot, each leaf fuzzy and radiant. Visitors always stopped to touch it, and the couple would smile, saying, "It thrives because we do nothing." Varieties bring different charms. Big ears shows off oversized leaves that almost spill over the edges of containers. Helen von Stein focuses all its energy on lush foliage instead of flowers, while Cotton Bowl surprises with tiny blooms that resemble tufts of cotton. And like many of the best container perennials, lamb's ear shrugs off deer, tolerates drought, and never overwhelms its space. The lesson of lamb's ear is profound in its simplicity. Sometimes stepping back allows beauty to unfold on its own. Just as people often shine brightest when given space, lamb's ear proves that neglect, when gentle and wise, can be a gift. Few plants know how to put on a show quite like the day lily. Each flower lasts only a single day, but don't let that fool you. The plant produces so many buds that your containers will look like they're hosting a parade of blossoms all summer long. I think of them as the storytellers of the garden, offering something new every morning, a reminder that joy can be found in daily gifts rather than only in grand events. In my cousin's backyard, she grew a pot of bright yellow Stella d'Oro daylilies. Every morning while sipping coffee, she'd count how many blooms had opened overnight. One morning, it was 5, another morning 8. "It's like unwrapping presents," she laughed. Over the years, she added red, purple, and even double-flowered varieties, creating a living kaleidoscope that required almost no care. Just a bit of water in summer, occasional, dividing every few years, and the daylilies rewarded her with months of color. What makes them special for containers is their flexibility. They handle full sun or partial shade, rich soil, or poor dry weather or damp. They are cold, hardy deer, resistant and adaptable to whatever life throws their way. Some varieties are fragrant, filling the evening air with sweetness, while others bloom at night, offering a quiet surprise for stargazers. Daylilies remind us of life's fleeting yet abundant joys. Each blossom may be brief, but taken together, they create a season filled with light. For those of us who sometimes feel the days slip too quickly, daylilies offer comfort. Even a short-lived moment can be precious, and enough small moments can create a lifetime of beauty. If you've ever sat in a field on a breezy day, you'll remember the sound of grasses, soft rustling, almost like whispers passing between friends. Ornamental grasses bring that same gentle music to your containers, adding not just beauty, but motion and sound. Unlike most flowers that fade when seasons change, grasses remain a presence all year, shifting from green to gold, swaying gracefully through summer, and standing tall even when dusted with snow. They're the poets of the garden, speaking without words. One of my neighbors once planted Carl Förster feather reed grass in a large ceramic pot by her front walk. All summer, it stood like a golden fountain, and in fall, the plumes shimmered in the afternoon sun. She told me she loved hearing it whisper while she read on the porch, calling it her companionship plant. Children in the neighborhood loved touching the fuzzy flower spikes of fountain grass, laughing at how soft they felt. And little blue fescue created neat mounds that looked like silver blue pillows, perfect for edging a row of containers. What makes ornamental grasses perfect for lazy gardeners is their resilience. Once planted, they need only a good watering to establish, and then they thrive with little to no attention. The only chore is cutting them back once in late winter or leaving them standing for the architectural beauty they bring against a gray sky. Either way, they return faithfully each spring, fuller and more graceful than before. Their lesson is timeless beauty is not always about color or bloom. Sometimes it's about presence movement and the way life stirs in the smallest winds. Ornamental grasses remind us to slow down, listen closely, and find joy in simple whispers that fill the quiet spaces of our days. Coneflowers are like the dependable friends who show up, bring a gift, and stay to help clean up afterward. With their daisy-like blooms and sturdy nature, they offer not just beauty, but a threefold reward: flowers that last for months, seed heads that feed goldfinches and other birds, and self-seeding that gives you new plants year after year. Place them in a container and they'll carry on as though they were planted in the richest garden bed. I remember visiting a neighbor's patio where a single pot of purple coneflowers had been set by the railing. That one pot became a stage for a lively performance, all summer bees buzzing from bloom to bloom, butterflies pausing to rest, and later in the year, finches tugging at the seed heads. She smiled as she watched from her rocking chair, saying, "It's my whole nature show in one container." The joy was in its constancy, always offering something no matter the season. The classic Magnus with its bold purple petals is still beloved, but newer varieties extend the palette to oranges, greens, pink doubles, and fiery reds like hot papaya. They flourish without fertilizer, needing only lean soil and a little sun. Too rich a mix makes them floppy, but in ordinary potting soil, they stand proudly. Coneflowers also spread themselves politely with seedlings that may bloom in unexpected colors, a small gift of surprise each year. Their lesson is clear: true worth comes in giving more than one gift. Just as wisdom, kindness, and presence outshine fleeting appearances, coneflowers prove that beauty isn't enough on its own. It's the ability to feed, to return, and to multiply joy that makes them unforgettable companions in any garden. On the coldest days of winter, when most pots stand bare and forgotten, hellebores rise like quiet miracles, sometimes called the Christmas rose or Lenten rose. These perennials bloom when little else dares, pushing out flowers in shades of white, burgundy, pink. Even spotted varieties, often right through snow and ice. I still recall the first time I saw one in bloom. A neighbor had placed a pot of pure white hellebores on her porch in January. Against the gray of winter, the blossoms glowed like lanterns, offering beauty when it was least expected. What makes hellebores such a treasure for containers is their resilience. They prefer good drainage, something pots provide naturally, and once planted, they can thrive for over a decade with minimal fuss. Their leathery evergreen foliage remains attractive year-round, giving structure and life even when other plants are resting. Varieties like ice and roses bloom from December through April, while Red Lady offers deep burgundy flowers that look almost black in the snow. Each bloom can last for months, carrying your garden through the darkest season with surprising color. I knew a retired couple who placed hellebores outside their living room window so they could watch them even when they didn't feel like braving the cold. Each morning, they'd sip coffee, smile at the blooms, defying frost, and say they remind us that beauty doesn't take a season off. And they were right. Hellebores ask for so little, yet give so much. Their lesson is simple but profound. Even in the hardest seasons, life can still surprise us with grace. Hellebores remind us that resilience often shines brightest when conditions seem most difficult, offering hope when it's needed most. When most plants retreat for winter's rest, evergreen sedums stand firm like little sculptures carved by nature's hand. Their shapes remain crisp and architectural, adding structure to your containers even under snow. I've seen autumn fire turn a rich burgundy in the cold months Matrona, holding tall stems, dusted in frost, and blackjack darkening almost to black, creating striking contrasts against a gray sky. They are proof that a container garden doesn't need to vanish with the seasons. It can hold beauty year-round. A friend of mine once kept a single container of evergreen sedum by her mailbox. She confessed she hadn't watered it in years, and yet each season it offered something new. In spring, fresh rosettes unfurled. In summer, tiny blooms called butterflies and bees. In fall, the seed heads provided food for birds, and in winter, the plant's structure became a quiet sculpture against the snow. She told me, "It's the one plant I trust never to fail me." Evergreen sedums thrive on neglect-resisting deer drought and poor soil. They don't ask to be divided or fussed over. In fact, like many resilient things, they often look better when left alone. That's what makes them the perfect final touch for a lazy gardener's collection. They complete the circle, providing presence through all 4 seasons. Their lesson is timeless. Sometimes the most lasting beauty comes from constancy, from being there no matter the weather. Evergreen sedums remind us that a strong foundation, once established, can hold steady even when everything else has faded. In gardening, as in life, that kind of enduring presence is a treasure. Ask any seasoned gardener what kills more container plants than anything else, and they'll answer in unison: soggy roots. It isn't drought that shortens the life of most potted perennials, it's drowning. That's why the very first shortcut for lazy gardeners is proper drainage. Think of it like good shoes for your plants. Without them, everything else falls apart. Every container, no matter how pretty, must have holes at the bottom, at least 3 for smaller pots and half a dozen for the larger ones. Without them, water lingers too long, turning soil into a swamp that suffocates roots. I once visited a friend who couldn't understand why her plants kept failing. She was diligent about watering, sometimes too diligent, and her containers had no holes. The poor plants were swimming instead of sipping. We drilled several small holes, added a layer of gravel and broken pottery at the bottom for airflow, and within weeks, her pots transformed into thriving displays. She laughed, saying, "I thought I was loving them. Turns out I was smothering them." To test your own drainage water, a freshly filled pot, and watch how it behaves. The water should slip through within seconds. Yet, an hour later, the soil, a couple of inches down, should still feel damp. That balance, moist but never soggy, is the secret to roots that stay strong. The lesson is one of moderation. Too little care and a plant may thirst, but too much love can be just as harmful. In life, as in gardening, the healthiest growth often comes when we allow balance, providing what's needed, then stepping back to let resilience take root. If drainage is the first secret, then size is the second. Small pots might look charming, but for perennials, they're like cramped apartments with no running water. Soil dries too quickly in summer, and in winter, those little pots freeze solid, leaving roots. No chance to survive. That's why I tell every new gardener, invest in larger containers. 16 inches across is the minimum. And if you can manage 24, your plants will thank you by living longer, blooming brighter, and asking far less of you. A neighbor of mine once struggled with a collection of dainty 10-inch pots, each filled with hopeful starts. Every summer, she was tethered to her watering can, visiting them daily in the heat. She finally tried moving a few plants into 2 large ceramic tubs she'd found on sale. That year, the difference was dramatic. The soil stayed moist for days instead of hours, and instead of fragile little plants, she had showpieces that drew compliments from every passerby. She laughed and said, "I traded 10 needy pots for 2 easy ones, and it feels like I cut my chores in half." Larger containers also protect roots through winter. The extra soil insulates them, keeping temperatures more stable and reducing stress. While the upfront cost is higher, the long-term reward is fewer failures, less work, and far greater beauty. It's the gardening version of quality over quantity. And here lies the life lesson. Sometimes we spread ourselves too thin, juggling many small tasks that leave us weary. By choosing fewer but bigger commitments, the ones that truly matter, we can thrive more fully. Bigger pots, like a simpler schedule, create room to grow without constant strain. The third shortcut is all about what goes inside those bigger pots, the soil. Garden soil from the yard is far too heavy, turning into a soggy mess in containers. Cheap potting soil, on the other hand, often holds too much water and collapses into muck. The lazy gardener's answer is a simple recipe, one that sets your plants up for success without needing to be replaced each year. Start with a quality potting mix as the base. To that, add about 1/3 perlite to improve drainage, and finish with a scoop of compost for steady nutrition. The result is light, airy, and balanced. Water runs through, but enough moisture clings to keep roots happy. A retired friend of mine mixes a large batch each spring, storing it in a covered bin on her porch. She says it saves her endless trips to the store, and her containers always look fresh. Instead of dumping everything out each year, she simply scrapes away the top 2 inches of soil, adds a bit of compost, and stirs. That little refresh keeps her pots thriving for seasons on end. The beauty of this mix is not just in how it works, but in how it simplifies. Plants grow stronger with less fuss. You spend less money on expensive bagged blends, and you avoid the heartache of plants failing in soggy soil. The lesson here is one of foundation. Just as a house rests best on steady ground, our lives and our gardens flourish when the base is right. With the right soil beneath them, even the most neglected plants can rise with grace. It reminds us that strength begins unseen in the quiet places that hold us steady. So here we are, dear friend, at the end of our stroll through the easiest, most forgiving plants a gardener could hope for. From the drought-tolerant sedums that blush brighter when forgotten, to the winter-blooming hellebores that defy the snow, each plant has whispered the same truth. Beauty doesn't need constant fuss to flourish. With the right choices, your containers can thrive in every season, offering fragrance, color, and comfort with very little effort. I've shared stories of neighbors whose porches transformed with just one pot, and of friends who discovered that neglect sometimes leads to greater resilience. Perhaps one lesson stands out above all: gardening isn't about how much we can do for our plants, but how wisely we choose companions that can do for themselves. These perennials remind us that life in the garden, like life itself, is sweeter when we work with nature rather than against it. If you've ever doubted your green thumb, I hope this list has lifted that weight. You don't need youth, endless energy, or expensive tools to create something breathtaking. All you need is curiosity, a pot with drainage, a handful of good soil, and the willingness to let these hardy friends surprise you. So, which of these 17 treasures spoke to you most? Will you try the silvery lamb's ear that grows more beautiful with neglect, or the cheerful black-eyed Susans that shine like little suns? Share your choice with me. I'd love to know. Until next time, may your hands continue to create beauty, may your garden bring you peace, and may your days be filled with small blossoms of joy. Happy gardening, dear friend.